I do think that this is the moment where HR professionals and HR leaders can have a greater impact, not only in business, but helping to channel and shape some of the implications of AI in society. We shouldn't forget that. And I think that creates purpose because it is going to change the swim lanes of how people graduate, how people learn, how many people are employed.
Hello and welcome to the Future Proof HR podcast, where we explore how forward thinking leaders are preparing for disruption and redefining what it means to lead people in a changing world. I'm your host, Thomas Kunjappu, CEO of Cleary. Today's guest is Alim Dhanji, CHRO at TD SYNNEX, a dynamic HR leader and business executive whose unconventional career spans multiple industries and functions. Alim has moved in and out of HR roles, serving as President of Adidas Canada, leading M&A strategy, stepping into CFO duties, and even running a tech startup. Now, as a seasoned CHRO, Alim brings together commercial acumen, strategic HR leadership, and is even driving AI-driven transformations. So he believes that today's HR leaders must go beyond traditional functional boundaries, using AI to deepen business understanding and becoming indispensable strategic partners to the C-suite and the board. Alim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Thomas. So wonderful to be here. Appreciate you inviting me.
So right off the bat, you have a very unconventional career, I would say, coming in and out of HR in many ways. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It wasn't designed that way, certainly. I've been in the workforce now for roughly 27 years, and I've always been entrepreneurial minded because of my family upbringing. And I've always had this insatiable appetite for curiosity and different cultures, et cetera. So I think that has ignited a growth mindset and constant questioning of different operating models and business environments. And so, yes, I started out in HR, and then I ended up taking a role in Asia, moved to Hong Kong, and I got exposed to M&A type of work, which was fascinating, hyper competitive, especially in that part of the world. That only continued to spur my curiosity for getting into business. And then I went to KPMG, where a year into the role, I found myself also then leading finance, which was never in the cards, but it certainly gave me a different lens. Then I went back into HR. Then I went to run a dating app with the founder. That was phenomenal. That's probably a different podcast on its own. You go along with these different tours of duty and pick up not only a lens, but different skills, different points of understanding around how to lead a team of engineers or how to elevate the role that finance plays in an organization. So that kind of has been a pattern in my role. And then most recently, I was in the head office of Adidas in a head of talent role, and my CEO asked me to take on the president of Adidas Canada, which was phenomenal because especially the senior you get, transferring to that kind of role is very rare, and the stakes are probably higher. But I did it nonetheless, and not only that, it was in the midst of COVID, it was in the midst of supply chain disruption, so lots of opportunity for crucibles and really learning. But now find myself back in HR. My passion is people and culture, but I feel that because of the different business rotations I've done, I can bring a unique lens and elevate HR in doing so as well.
When you talk through that trajectory, the question of identity almost comes to mind for me. A lot of folks define themselves as, let's say, I'm a student, or I'm an HR professional, I'm an athlete, or I am a specific in the work world, like I've been in a specific function and I'm entrenched and really investing in what's happening in this particular expertise. And how do you think of yourself? And maybe this is more belying my biases because maybe you don't even think in this way in the professional world, and you're talking about curiosity. But how do you, especially as you go through these moments of pivots in terms of what you're actually doing, did you find the way you identify yourself shift in any major way, or was that not even a question?
Probably not an overt question. I think if anything, if I had to pick a title, it would be student. It's lifelong learning, and having gone from large corporates like Citigroup, where you've got nearly 300,000 people to across 180 countries, to a startup with 100 people, You've gotta be agile and thoughtful around how you show up and how you open yourself for learning. I went to KPMG where it's a partnership and across different sectors. So I think when you're doing that, the underlying red thread is that you're a student. You're constantly learning and picking up best practices and giving back. But I guess, yeah, I guess to your question more specifically, I am proud to be an HR leader. And the funny thing is, when I left HR to go to business and then came back to HR, a lot of the people in HR said, "Why would you do that?" Almost like it's a negative to go back to HR. And the reality is where that is where a lot of the change in the forward-looking business models are going. I mean, think about the impact of AI, demographic changes, geopolitics. They all have a massive influence around how people show up. So being in HR, I think that this is the perfect time to be in HR.
That's a great perspective. And maybe another way to get at the question is you mentioned the concept of tours of duty and came from the military, but also in the corporate setting, your typical employee is not doing 25 years in a watch. You're going in, which was the career path, right? You could start off right out of high school or college and you work your way through to retirement. And there's a clear trajectory and a career ladder. Companies have career ladders now, but it's not for a specific person. It's more for the organization because people are coming in and out and doing these tours of duty. Do you think that is becoming a more central part, central to how HR professionals are developing?
I think so. When I talk about tours of duty, they can be within one organization. If you've got a large organization, you can go from corporate functions to a P&L role, or you can go through different rotations within a corporate function. Also, I think you can go to different countries if you're in a global environment. And so the learning can be constant. And it's not so much about a ladder, it's more about a lattice, right? It's about navigating the organization and picking up new capabilities and expanding your employability in doing so as well. So I do think that that is the new generation. The new generation is also thinking about leaving the company and coming back. So lots of boomerangs. Then there's gig works and portfolio. So this whole notion of portfolio life, which is all fascinating. So I do think that the traditional one organization career ladder is no longer the case.
So let's talk about business impact and how the HR role is changing a little bit, and especially with the lens that you've had coming in and out of that title. How do you think your experience is shaping your view of like of HR's role specifically within the organization?
Yeah. So on one hand, when I stepped into the Adidas President of Adidas Canada role, I was now on the receiving end of what I was pushing out from the talent role. And the team is fantastic. I think that the team produced a ton of great value. But sometimes when you're removed from the front line, you focus more on best practice and conceptual and strategy. And so what I found now is I was receiving those best practices, but at the end of the day, the store manager in their mid 20s has half an hour a week to absorb what the corporate functions are putting on the marketing, loss prevention, finance. Everyone's giving them something. So my 30-page or 20-page deck is not going to land. It's got to be pragmatic, it's got to be simple, it's got to be executable. And so I think the lens by which I look at how HR is being delivered has changed phenomenally, like fundamentally. And it is about simplification, it is about impact and driving results, not just about best practice.
I love this framing, and I'd love to push you to go give if you can give me any kind of specifics. So is there something, if you want to put yourself in the hot seat, something that you were delivering in an earlier time as on the HR side to the business side that you feel like, oh, if it was done this way instead, the impact would be more direct or more actionable or more useful?
I think there could be a range of products. If I just pick on one, a program like onboarding, right? All the best practice say that when someone comes into the organization, it's about balancing the hearts and minds and culture and what is the company about, et cetera. Yes, that is true. But it is also true that person who's coming in to sell shoes and shirts needs to be operational within the hour kind of thing. So we don't always have the luxury in all roles to embed yourself in a week-long learning about the culture. So I think that now, especially with technology, we can reimagine what is onboarding and how does it start before you even show up on the first day so that you can give micro learnings in advance. But also, perhaps it's getting them operational first, and then throughout their journey, give them the right doses of culture inspiration or what is the company about, rather than bombarding them just from the start. Just one practical example, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a profound thing, but when you have a number of different HR programs, they start to compound. So this is one way to simplify.
And looking at it from the customer's point of view, it's like when they start to compound, you look at it from that store clerk's point of view. What just like happened? I just spent a week in a room consuming all these like PowerPoints, which
Yeah.
then you kind of forget about. That's a classic way to do it. So then let's talk about AI a little bit more. How do you see just AI changing the way HR is done?
You can't have a discussion any day of the week without talking about AI. And it's, yes, there's a lot of AI opportunity within HR, but quite frankly, it's permeating right across the organization in every function, every country, every role. But if I look at HR specifically, I started this role about 16 months ago. And within the first 90 days, of course, after listening and paying attention to what people need in the company, I got together with my senior HR leadership team and we created a bold vision. And it started off with we will be an AI first digitally enabled HR function. And my entire team was not with me. They rejected that, and I didn't want to be directive, so I let it simmer for a couple of months. But as time went on, and everything that's happening now around how HR is absorbing AI, whether it's recruitment or learning or onboarding, it's becoming real. And and so I didn't force it through, but I did set the bar. And what I found was that the HR team grabbed on to the AI first digitally enabled concept, and now they love it, right? Because it set the tone around how we support the business. And every product that we look at, so I look at HR as a series of products. And therefore, how do you manage each product and what is the design thinking, et cetera. So we're looking literally at every product to say, if we had to scrap this product and rebuild it, how would we look at it with an AI first lens? We've just done that with learning. We're now doing that with recruitment. And I can't wait to get started on performance because I think that is going to be such a huge unlock around how we think about AI enablement through performance. But I could go on and on. The biggest area I think is probably unlocking transactional services that HR is just so mired in.
Yeah.
And there are so many platforms out there, but that look at automating and digitizing and creating consumer grade experiences for your workforce to transact within with the company. That just then creates all this capacity for HR to do different things. So there's both an effectiveness and an efficiency agenda for HR when it comes to AI.
Right, like with some of the examples around like learning or recruitment, like there's you could improve the candidate or employee experience through these programs beyond what you were able to do with the resources you had available. But then on the other hand, for example, with HR service delivery and tickets and answering questions, that can actually be more efficient, but also better for employees at the same time. I want to hone in on a little sub challenge that you started talking about there, which is bringing a team along in a transformation as a mindset to be, let's say, be AI native in this case, which there is resistance, I think, across the organization. Like you said, AI is impacting every part of the organization, but let's stay specifically within HR. How did you think about guiding your team in this direction, being firm but also open? Can you, if you're talking to your peers who are at the CHRO level, have that mindset, and at the organization level, there's this buy-in towards reimagining the function. How would you go about translating that into the organization itself or the function itself?
Yeah, so I think it's important always to role model first. So I would share in our town halls, even in our day-to-day interactions, how I'm using AI
Mm,
to make myself productive. And it could be the most simple example or something that's just innovative and complex. There are AI applications out there where you could take a pretty dense annual report or financial statement and put it in there. and it will produce, a 2-minute podcast or that you can listen to, which is in layman's terms. So what would normally take you maybe 90 minutes to absorb and it's dense reading, not so exciting, you now have the gist of it within a couple of minutes, which then sharpens your financial acumen. So I think you can go into a meeting that much more prepared. Um, but what else I did is with the team, we did a global hackathon. This was almost about 8 or 9 months ago, but we we gave this challenge over 72 hours to all HR colleagues around the world and said, come up with different ideas of how you could leverage AI, whether it's efficiency or it's effectiveness. We want to hear them all. I had no idea what we are going to get. I wasn't expecting any silver bullets, but what was amazing was that everyone rallied and we got over 100 ideas and
Wow.
we picked the top 10 that we would then move forward for potential use cases. That is great. It's great to get that short list of 10, but what is even greater was just giving people space and time to experiment and to try something different and get comfortable with it. The resistance comes from the unknown. And there is a lot of fear because the immediate thing that people go to when you talk about AI is it's just for technologists, which I am not, or it's going to take over my job. And so why would I?
Yep.
I found the experimentation really helped. And then the third area is about skills enablement. And there is no shortage of this. So I don't think you need to create that internally. You can go on MIT, Google. I mean, there's so many different options where you could just go online and learn for free about different forms of AI. And if you're just using ChatGPT, I think you're using like half a percentage point of what's really available out there, right? So I think those three, there's probably more, but those three I would definitely say are fundamental and foundational in setting the tone around AI.
So then, have you had any reactions from the either HR teams or even we can go broader to the organization as well, because we're talking about a whole workforce that is shifting, right, and adapting to AI in their day to day. Any stories from the trenches?
Yeah. Shortly after I was visiting our offices in Munich and I sat there and there were some presentations and our head of comp for the region said, "Oh, I want to show you. I just created our own little GPT for comp." And that excited me. And what he did was, one of the things that comp people get quite often are job reviews, position profiles, because you're gonna reevaluate them and reassign a grade and then attach a
Yeah.
comp profile against it. And it's sort of rinse and repeat type of analysis. But now a GPT can do this. You load the job description, it will analyze it against a set of variables that are defined. And then with data from comp surveys, say, this job really looks like it's this grade. And if it's this grade, then it'll be this comp range, right? So normally, human intervention, probably a couple hours. With GPT, it's probably 5 to 10 minutes of some
Hmm.
back and forth, which then frees up capacity for the comp person and delights the manager that's requesting it because they get it really quickly. And probably you're going to get additional intelligence from that chat interface that you might not have had. So that was one really great example. On the other hand, I also got feedback that, oh wow, I'm scared because my job all day is to write job profiles. And now ChatGPT can write it in 30 seconds. So that gives an opportunity for us to have an open dialogue. And I don't want it to be threatening, so I don't want them to feel that they're gonna be exited next week. I wanna give them time and capacity to reskill, and I think that is it. That is an accountability and something that leaders need to lean into so that we make sure that reskilling is a benefit. And I got this from Tanuj, who's CHRO and had a brand at Standard Charter, because this notion of reskilling as a benefit for employability is fascinating, especially now. If you've got a
Yeah.
workforce that's a bit nervous around what's going to happen to them, then we have a responsibility as leaders to reskill and improve their employability.
This has been a fantastic conversation so far. If you haven't already done so, make sure to join our community. We're building a network of the most forward-thinking HR and people operations professionals who are defining the future. I will personally be sharing news and ideas around how we can all thrive in the age of AI. You can find it at gocleary.com/Cleary-community. Now back to the show. And while it is a responsibility, it can also be a competitive advantage in the labor market if you are doing it well and are making that promise, especially in this market. That's a great point and a good reframing um, of reskilling and actually the L&D work and tying that an HR function does, but tying that to the engagement and outcome metrics potentially for the organization. But let's talk beyond AI to just the future of how this function is kind of moving, because in line with your background of being curious, being a student, working with the business as a client in HR, but then also being on that client side or on the business owning P&Ls or trying to make things happen on a tactical level. Um, how do you think HR professionals can go from this tactical execution, which is in administration, which has been the hallmark for a while, to becoming more influential, becoming true business partners within the organization?
Yeah. So I always think about, maybe it's the M&A background in me, but what do you divest? What do you acquire? Like what do you give up? What do you pick up? And so I do think that we're all constrained in terms of time. Finding an hour in the week is difficult at best. And so you have to figure out how you're going to divest, and whether, again, going back to AI, if you can leverage AI to make yourself more productive so that you can carve out an extra hour or 90 minutes in your week, then that liberates you to pick up something new. And if you're sharpening your P&L or financial or business acumen, I think the one greatest benefit of AI is that it has taken down the gatekeeping of technical expertise, right? If I'm going into a meeting, and actually this is a true scenario where we're redesigning or reimagining some of our compensation programs in equity, which is so hardwired to our financial metrics, and we want to be innovative, but also want to be in compliance with we're a public company, not a private equity. But I could use ChatGPT or other forms of AI to really teach myself around why looking at free cash flow versus return on equity or certain type of other financial metric, you can quickly have a discussion that gives you the right confidence and capability to have that sort of debate with the CFO or other leaders. So technical gatekeeping is now no longer an issue. And so you don't necessarily have to go to business school. I mean, sure, going to business school teaches you things and it gives you a broader depth. But if you're at a career level where you don't want to go back to business school, I think AI is a big unlock, and I think that should be leveraged.
I just want to go deeper on this particular use case because I think from a couple of angles. First of all, I think this is a good example of the kind of thing that deeper new work that AI. It's an example potentially of a new work that AI enables because it's very easy to think about the kind of work that we're doing today that goes away. But in this case, I would argue this is the kind of thing that maybe wouldn't really get done, maybe at a public company with a major, huge ROI to getting the comp structure exactly right. But for a lot of other companies, this kind of work may not actually ever get done. Or if it does, in this case, you're doing some complex modeling about how the compensation program might impact free cash flow or the return on stock. And those things would really, I would imagine, in yesteryear, involve meetings, including someone in financial operations or an analyst who is saying, okay, now you got some homework, come back with a model or build a custom spreadsheet where we can make some tweaks, make some assumptions, and have a bunch of meetings together. But that could happen by yourself more dynamically and you can get to some
Yeah.
answers more rapidly, which I think the other part of what you're saying is it also is helping you. If you're curious, it's not just about doing things, it's also about teaching you things, right? So you should be able to use general purpose AI to help you learn areas of the business. I guess in this case, we're talking about just how to read a P&L statement and also the impact of the in this case, compensation and how it would impact that. But really, arguably any product, as you say, or program from HR, if you want to match it to, or think about ROI, or think about how it impacts the P&L, you could do a similar kind of exercise and teach
Yeah.
yourself that. Does that?
And it applies to so many different areas. I've implemented value change initiatives in other companies. And in the past, especially in global companies, when you're rolling out values, it's not just about the organizational corporate layer. It is how are those values going to sit in Mexico versus China versus Botswana? And typically, you would have had to spend a small fortune on an external consultant who has a background in anthropology or whatever to stress test it for you and give you a report that says, this is where we have concerns and this is what you should consider. We just did that. We implemented our values. In fact, we're launching them next week. And before we had the discussion at the ELT, we put it through a GPT. And I said, we operate in these countries. We want to make sure that our coworkers understand and connect to the values. Which countries should I anticipate sensitivity? And what I got back was something amazing. And it was a table that helped me think through things. And I met with each of the presidents in our regions and I shared them. They said, yes, that's exactly correct. And we should think about this word being a bit too aggressive in some parts of the world. This might be perceived as a dare, or we have dare to go. That might be
Wow.
perceived as a threat. So how do we augment that? And so that it was together, we dare and go. And that makes it a little bit more accepting. But that piece of work, would have taken us weeks to do. It would probably cost $100,000. And we did this in a couple of hours, right? So productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, speed. So you delight the CEO because you got this sorted within a short period of time. I could give you endless examples of how AI is changing everyone's role and how they could lean in and be more effective and efficient.
So if you take all of these, there's so many use cases and examples that we were just like peppering in throughout, right? If you add them up all together and you look to the future, what is the what does the function look like? Do you
Yeah.
imagine? Let's say give it a 5-year horizon, right? Now, what is going to be different about what people are doing tactically, day to day? What's being demanded, or what is a demand sucked in from both employees and boards and executive teams from the function? And of course, how can we all get ready for that?
Yeah. So the notion of super worker, I think, is true. But connecting the super worker to a unlock of technical gatekeeping for various disciplines then creates an opportunity for those that excel in critical thinking, change leadership, reasoning, articulating some information and storytelling.
Mm.
By the way, those are all portable capabilities, right? And not specific to a discipline, finance or HR or marketing. Those are general capabilities. If you have someone with that, and then they're leveraging AI the right way, you don't need the expertise in compensation. You don't need the expertise of 10, 15 years in learning and development or in benefits administration, because AI is going to be able to make that available to you. It's about writing the right prompt. It's about then taking that information and applying critical reasoning, saying, does this make sense? Is this the right thing for our organization? You're still going to have to implement it. So then what's the change leadership around it? So to me, it is about the super worker who can take vast amount of information. They don't have to be the technical expert. It is literally the layer of being able to take information, story tell it, and make meaning of it, fit for purpose for the organization that they're in.
That leads to an important question then. What would, if that's the case, and you're talking to early career professionals who are just, or maybe someone who's just in college at the moment, right? And they're thinking about getting into the HR field, or that's what they're like studying for, maybe even doing a master's in it. What kind of advice would you have for those kind of folks given that future?
It's a challenge. I honestly empathize with new grads right now because we haven't in society adopted that super worker model. And we haven't, in organizations, created the stratification of how many humans and how many agents we need. I think it's coming. So they're right now in a little bit of a limbo. And I know so many smart people who've just graduated and cannot find work because the consulting firms are not recruiting as much as they used to. And so I think that there's going to be a period of ambiguity. What I would say to them is lean in into those portable capabilities of critical thinking, understanding how to leverage and harness AI, storytelling. These are all important capabilities that I think are going to become that much more critical going forward. I go back to another experience I had when I got this Adidas president role. My then CEO Casper also sent me, and I was privileged to do this. It was really difficult, but I was privileged to go to Harvard for the AMP program. And what they do really well is we went through 180 cases, different companies, and you learn everything about Disney to Starbucks to all kinds of different cases. What they're actually teaching you is not to be an expert as a technologist or a finance leader. They're teaching you critical thinking with the data that you have available. Okay, so now I take that, and if I've learned some critical thinking there, that's great. But the data that you have available now is endless, right? Think about that. So it's not just the data you have available at your fingertips. You now, with ChatGPT or any form of AI, you can get all kinds of data, but then it's too much data. So how do you bring that back and converge and diverge and make meaning of it and then implement a sound strategy? So it's exciting, but it's also scary. But I come back to critical thinking as being the one capability that we really need to lean into.
Let me push back a little bit on this one concept about not that critical thinking, storytelling, these meta cognition skills are not important. Obviously, they are. And yet, using like software engineering, for example, like a software engineer is best positioned to prompt uh, an AI agent to create software for them that is not buggy, that's performant and production ready. An HR comp specialist is best positioned with that expertise, the technical expertise and understanding of that function is best positioned to create an AI agent that will help them or work with AI in a way that will produce results that you can actually reliably stand behind and recommend in polite conversation. And even forgetting the hallucinations, just the idea that you're able to converse in depth on this particular field and topic versus asking maybe more basic questions if you weren't there. Isn't there still, I guess what I'm getting at, isn't there still a role for expertise, in-depth knowledge beyond the metacognition skills, which are important to get into any particular topic? Because there will still be specialties, right? And people who are really good in using the latest technology available to get outcomes that are best in class.
My hot take is for now, yes, because we haven't yet gotten into a full agentic workforce. But you're right, at some point, it'll take a compensation expert coupled with someone who's probably a technologist to create an agent that can do exactly what that comp person could do. We're not there yet. And so right now we're using general GPTs and AI to extract knowledge and make meaning of it. But we're fast moving towards agentic opportunities. And so when we get there, I do think that the technical roles will no longer be needed. You're gonna focus more on what do you do with the outcome of what that agent's producing. Um, again, I'm not a futurist, but that's what I'm seeing the trend go towards. Um, I'm not a lawyer, but I worked through just more recently creating a power of attorney for my mother. Normally, I'd go and pay $500 and have it written.
Yeah.
I wrote it. Now, again, I don't know if it's hallucinating or not, but I wrote it in minutes, I
Right.
tweaked it, and then I have a phone a friend, right? So right now, I just sent it to a lawyer friend. I said, I don't want to pay. Can you take a look at it? And they did, and so it's pretty sound.
Yeah.
It's pretty sound. So why would I go? So I think this is going to continue to proliferate at the point where you're going to probably have an agent that specializes in power of attorneys.
Makes sense. And at some point, the burden of proof is right now. The burden of proof is on the LLM uh, for anything that is of import. So in this case,
Yeah,
you want to get this right if you're going to actually get this document signed. So you're putting a human in the loop. But maybe at some
yeah,
point that will be 9,999 times out of 10,000. It's just getting it right, and so people flip to it being
yeah,
completely autonomous.
yeah. It's that
Yeah,
validation rule. Right now, there's definitely validation. We are exploring, for example, we do hundreds of RFPs, and RFPs, if you've ever written one, 2 to 3 weeks at least, right? Depending on how big the initiative is. AI can literally do that now in an hour with some back and
yeah,
forth. But I would be uncomfortable putting out an RFP, responding to a client with it just going through our system and not having being reviewed by a human. So you still need a validation layer. And that might be a lawyer, that might be a salesperson or a marketing person. In future, I don't know. I think that a number of agents will look at that RFP and comment on it. There might be some kind of DocuSign. That's got to be where we're going. Okay.
yeah.
There's pros and cons to it from a society perspective, from what this means for jobs. I'm not advocating for it. But I also have to accept that that's probably where we're going. And so we have to think about what are the implications.
Right, and the time horizon for that could be there's a lot of debate about that. We're
Yeah.
talking about like fully agentic and not to mention like AGI, but there's a clear trajectory that we can't ignore. And we've also talked about a lot of things short term that we should be doing right away within the HR function or not to future proof ourselves. Now, just to close out, you brought up this concept of a super worker. Could you just explore that concept a little bit more in depth for us?
I think there's probably multiple definitions, and someone's probably got the right definition. In my lens, it is someone who is leveraging AI to make themselves so much more effective and efficient. And so what normally you do in 40 hours, you might be able to do in 30 or 25 hours, but you don't slack off for the other 10 or 15. You do more. And so
Right,
actually you're getting expansion, right?
right,
So 40-hour week, if that's what you're doing, you're probably doing 70, but you're not working 70. I
right.
think that I see some of those individuals in our organization who have just harnessed AI so brilliantly that they're turning things around much quicker than they were in the past. And there's less back and forth. And they're over delivering. So I do classify them as a super worker.
That's great. Thank you for that. And for the broader conversation, Alim. So, are there any closing thoughts you want to share with us as you to mark this moment in time where we're just in this transition? You specifically for folks coming newly into the labor market, we talked about there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's really for everyone. There's uncertainty about where things are headed specifically. What do you look forward to the most?
I mean, like all conversations, they end up focusing so much more on AI. And so I do think that that is where the direction is. But if I raise the aperture there, it is such an amazing moment to be in HR. And as I think about other leaders who've left HR more recently, like Lena Nair, who left HR at Unilever and now is a very successful CEO of Chanel and blowing the numbers out of the park, I do think that this is the moment where HR professionals and HR leaders can have a greater impact, not only in business, but helping to channel and shape some of the implications of AI in society. We shouldn't forget that. And I think that creates purpose because it is going to change the swim lanes of how people graduate, how people learn, how many people are employed. So I get really excited about that. Maybe it's the geek in me, but it's super exciting moment for us to be there, and we shouldn't shy away. I think we should just grab it by the horns and go for it.
I love that. And if you have a growth mindset, you're a constant student when the game on the field is changing, data is changing. It's just an opportunity to learn more and because new knowledge is available for the taking. Thank you for this wonderful conversation, Alim. I think there's a lot of value for fellow CHROs and people operations specialists to the directors of HR who are all kind of thinking about how their roles may change. And it's a really fascinating background that you bring into this, and specifically coming in and out and back to HR through all of the transitions. Thank you once again for the conversation. To everyone out there who's listening, hope you found as much value as I did. Good luck as you are future proofing your own organizations and your own HR functions. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye now.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Future Proof HR. If you like the discussion, make sure you leave us a 5-star review on the platform you're listening to or watching us on, or share this with a friend or colleague who may find value in the message. See you next time as we keep our pulse on how we can all thrive in the age of AI. Hey, it's Thomas again. One quick question before you go. Are you and your HR team tired of answering the same employee questions again and again in Slack? If yes, our Cleary AI-powered Slack bot is here to help. It takes routine employee requests and answers it automatically while freeing up time for you to take on more important tasks. At the same time, it automatically builds up an HR knowledge base as you go. It's quick to set up, works right in Slack, and you can try it for free. Just head on over to gocleary.com/HR-chatbot to install it. It's again, gocleary.com/HR-chatbot. Thanks again.